Hello and welcome to another episode of Django Chat, a weekly podcast on the Django Web Framework. I'm Will Vincent, joined as always by Carlton Gibson. Hi, Carlton.
Hi, Will.
And this week we're joined by Wenbin from Listen Notes. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Wenbin.
We wanted to have you on because we both loved your article on the boring tech behind a one-person internet company, and that actually blew up on Hacker News recently and justifies a lot of the points that Carlton and I try to make around keeping it simple even at scale. So we'd love to talk to you about how you do that. So for folks who don't know, what is Listen Notes? What's the quick pitch?
Yeah, so Listen Notes is a search engine for podcasts. It's like Google, but for podcasts. So you type in keywords and then you can search the whole internet, podcasts and episodes. And we also provide APIs for developers. If you want to build a podcast app or podcast related services, just use our API to search podcasts, to fetch podcast metadata.
Right. So if I wanted to make an app best Django podcasts, I could use your API and I'd come up with a list of Django podcasts, and Django Chat would be the number one Django podcast, and I could listen to that. Yeah, probably the one and only.
Yeah.
Super.
One and only. And how long have you been working on this?
Yeah, so I started Listen Notes as a side project in early 2017, January 2017. I spent probably 1 week throw together a quick prototype for Listen Notes, and then I didn't touch the code base for about 9 months. Because during that time, I was running my first startup, which eventually failed. And in September 2017, I left the startup I co-founded, and I needed to find something to do. So I pick up Listen Notes and work on it a little bit, and I work on it full time, and I incorporated it as a company, a one-person company, and then until now. Actually, this month would be the 2-year anniversary for Listen Notes as a company.
Congratulations.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Thank you.
And you still one man? Still one person?
Full-time employee, yes, one full-time employee, me. But I hire some contractors on and off for different things, like design, content, or some front-end development, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So one thing I wanted to ask you, because for beginners to Python, they hear something like, I did a prototype in a week or a weekend, and it sounds unimaginable. So I wonder if you can recall, so what did that actually involve? I mean, start project, like what does a bare bones prototype look like for this? Because that's something that newcomers don't understand how that can be done.
Yeah. So if you look at listennotes.com today, it's quite complex. It has search engine, it has a playlist, has API, a lot of things. But back to the beginning, the project requirement was very simple. I just want to search podcast episodes. Let's see, a search bar, type in keyword, see the search results. Let's see. And I basically started with the Django template. I believe the command line is Django start or something like that.
Yeah.
So start a simple
start project.
Yeah. So basically, I started the barebone project. Added one view for the search page, and I spin up a Elasticsearch instance, index data, and so basically I have 3 DigitalOcean instances, one for web server running Django, one for Elasticsearch, and then one for Postgres database.
So how did you get the initial data? Where did that come from? Right, to populate?
So there are only a few well-known podcast directories on internet.
Okay,
right?
So did you scrape them or something?
So scrape them, and then gradually I built internal tools so I can submit myself. Also, podcasters can submit themselves. So let's say today you start a podcast today. You need to submit your podcast to somewhere. You submit to Spotify, to iTunes, and Listen Notes. So every day we are getting close to 100 podcast submissions from podcasters themselves.
So all right, so you started. So it's a simple page. You had your Elasticsearch. You had the initial data. So Elasticsearch, that's not a simple thing to spin up. I mean, clearly you've worked with Elasticsearch before, right?
Yeah, I had some experience. So basically, I follow some simple notes I took a few years ago, setting it up. It was not too difficult because I did it before.
Were you just running like the single node?
Single node.
Because you're meant to have the duplication and the replicas, and that's when it starts to get a bit hairy because you're.
Right now I have a cluster, but back then it was simple node. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Right,
well,
okay.
It's especially relevant to me because at DjangoCon this year, I gave a talk on search, talking about basic search and then with Postgres built-in search. Right. I'm curious, did you ever consider using built-in, the full text search in Postgres, or did you already know Elasticsearch? So was that a consideration?
I actually use So I actually use Postgres full text search for my other small side projects with a small amount of data. At the beginning of this Listen Notes project, I did some testing with Postgres full text search. It was very slow. If I remember correctly, it was very slow. So I gave up quickly, maybe because of the amount of data that we need to index.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's ingestion speeds.
Yeah. Right, because it seems like you're pulling in data, but data that's already there isn't going to change much, so you can index it and query it quickly.
It changed a lot.
Oh, it changed a lot?
The index data changed a lot.
Well,
because
well, there's new shows and then there's new episodes, right? Is it more
episodes?
What else?
And episodes data, podcast data change all the time.
Oh, okay.
Probably you guys don't update your podcast much, but if you have the whole internet's podcast data at any given time, there are some podcasts changing their description, title, RSS feed, audio URL. All kinds of things.
Well, so I wanted to ask, so in your article from, was it May of 2019, you said there's 20 production servers and many of those are workers. Could you describe the setup of workers you're using to, pull in this information?
Sure. So for workers, basically they are asynchronous processing task workers. I use Celery. Celery.
Okay.
If your audience are familiar with Celery. With those so basically Celery is a hookup with Celery Beat, which is a scheduler like Chrome. So we have some scheduled task like for crawling data, pulling data from RSS feed to add new episodes, and Celery also handles other async tasks, mostly compute intensive tasks. Like sending emails, resizing images, doing heavy database queries, things like that.
Yeah. Well, I like that this is, your use case is it's complex, but it's also simple, and that you can understand that it's, it's not tons and tons of workers. It's, emails and checking for changes to the podcast directories. So it makes a lot of sense. So how much, and I know you have all sorts of, actually, could you talk about, so you have monitoring involved, and you've listed a whole bunch of tools, right? So otherwise you couldn't sleep at night. How did you think about, or how did you baby step from that, right? Like if you recall, like what did you start with? And then now obviously you have a lot of monitoring going on.
Okay.
How would you tell yourself to do it? If someone's saying, okay, what do I start with, right? Because there's so many you can add. And
so basically, we set up monitoring and alerting to give us confidence about the health of the entire system, right? So high level, you need to know the website is up, the API is up, right?
Yeah.
So for monitoring, I use Datadog. And Datadog is connecting to PagerDuty for alerting. And for Datadog, we continuously ping the website and the API endpoint and check the response to see if it's 200, it's no 500.
Right.
And if it's no 200, then probably something broken, and I will get alert. So high level, you need to have this kind of stuff. But for individual components, you also need to monitor some metrics. Like for Postgres, you need to monitor a few things. For Redis, another few things. RabbitMQ, Elasticsearch, each of them I all have 1 or 2 alerts associated. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned for Django itself, you use Rollbar. Is that still the tool that you like to use?
Yes. So I get the stack trace, the full stack trace if something wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so Carlton and I spoke, and we wanted to ask you about, so you sort of proudly don't use Docker at all. And Carlton is big on this wagon. And
no.
Okay, make the case, Carlton. I'm not putting words in your mouth.
My case is simply this.
Docker
right,
repository is down right now, by the way,
95%,
which is relevant.
Right. But for 95% of Django applications out there, you don't need all this highfalutin container nonsense. You want a VM and you want to bang your application on it, and you want to run it the good old-fashioned simple way, because that VM will never go down. That will you'll never have port issues. You'll never have network issues. Like, you don't need all this massive containerization stuff until you're scaling up to something much bigger. And look at what Wenbin's doing single-handedly. Right. So that would be the way I'd phrase it. So what's your experience?
Go ahead. I was going to ask if it would be different if you had a team of developers, because to me, that's in some ways the biggest advantage is on a team having the same local setup, separate from. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
So I don't use Docker because it's unnecessary for my situation. For the workload I'm running for the team, I have basically it's just me as a backend engineer. So Docker is good to provide a standardized container. It's very portable. So you can run Docker container on your local dev. You can run the same container in staging, in production. You can spin up CI with Docker containers. It's very convenient. It's very easy to scale up and down. But for my situation, well, I run all these servers for many months. So I don't need to scale up and down often. And I don't have team, so it's just me. I basically set up everything. I don't need standardization for other people.
I mean, maybe one use case you might have, say you mentioned RabbitMQ. Well, maybe you don't want to install the whole Erlang VM and all the rest of it, and to use a container there to locally use RabbitMQ while you're developing or testing. That's one useful case where you don't need to go the whole hog with Docker. You don't have to jump into Kubernetes or whatever to use it a bit.
Yeah, so for my previous job, so previously I worked in Nextdoor, a local social network website. Yeah. And in 2014, I believe it was me who introduced Docker to the company. And so when did Docker come out? Maybe 2013.
Something like that, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so for a mid-sized company, for mid-sized staff with tens of engineers, with Docker is nice. So basically, we standardize the dev environment for all the engineers with Docker containers, and so it's easy to set up. Onboarding is easy.
Yeah, because onboarding is a huge
No, that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where a few years ago people were using Vagrant and VMs, right? So because you get the development VM, and you just be able to Vagrant up and it would run, but it's slow and heavy.
I'm using Vagrant.
Docker's much nicer.
Sorry, I'm using Vagrant right now. Okay. For listeners.
No, but I still use Vagrant loads because I'm a big advocate of VMs, but Docker is quicker and lighter, and I can see why people like it for the development environment.
Yeah. Well, speaking of deployment, so you're on AWS, is that right?
Yep.
Now, I assume you have previous experience, because AWS is not the easiest thing to start with. I'm curious if you could talk about your experience maybe with AWS versus other ones you've used professionally.
Sure. Yeah. So earlier on, I mentioned that I spin up 3 DigitalOcean.
Oh, yeah, you said that. Yes.
They call the instance Droplets. Because I don't know, because it's very lightweight or cheap.
Yeah, $5. Or whatever.
Yeah, $5 per month. I had 3 instances for listeners as a side project. I used the same setup for many months. Maybe 1 year after I started this side project, I migrated to AWS. The reason was very very simple because I started to work in WeWork, and WeWork gave you $5,000 AWS credit.
Oh.
And then I migrated to AWS. I mostly just use EC2 instance.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a vendor login with AWS. I just use EC2 instance. Anything else? Oh, I also use S3.
Right. Yeah, I think you in S3 and CloudFront for your front end.
Yep.
Well, I guess that's an.
But again, that's very sensible, right? Because Amazon, like each of the big services, they've got 50, 60 different things that you can use if you want to. But like if you just focus on S3 or just focus on EC2 or like 2 or 3 of the core services and get to know those, it's not any more complex than any other provider. It's just that they've also got QuickSight and all these million AI offerings. And do you need all of them?
No, for now.
So the front end. So you have for a single person startup. I mean, you're now running APIs and using, I believe, React in the full bit. Can you talk about that transition and at what point you switched over to using a dedicated front end?
Actually, at the very beginning, I started to use React.js.
Good for you.
Yeah. So basically, Django. So I did both backend rendering and front end rendering for HTML. So basically, Django renders the boilerplate for HTML, and then React render components inside the HTML page.
Right. Yeah. But so that first week prototype, you also hooked it up with React and Django Rest Framework?
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, I'm just trying to think that's gonna it's sort of something you can do when you have experienced listeners. You can whip these things up, but I know that all those things sound like just because I get so many questions about all of that, it's it takes some practice. But once you get to know how the steps, right, you're sort of duplicating your own steps, right? For I'll just do this is how I hook in React.
On GitHub, you can find many boilerplate starters. So basically, you run one command, and then it gives you the project boilerplate.
For React, you're saying?
For React, for Django, for the whole project setup.
What did you use? Cookie Cutter, or which one are you referring to?
I don't remember. I used some. I don't remember exactly, but I say that nowadays you can find a lot of such tools if you want to get started quickly.
Yeah. Well, I always wonder how good they are and how much you understand them, because I mean you can use them, but then if you don't know what's going on.
One downside using such tools is you don't go very deep into the mechanisms or all these things. Yeah.
But again, it's that first prototype versus what you end up with 2 years later.
Right. Yeah. Well, and just in terms of Django frameworks, Cookie Cutter is probably the top one by far. I mean, I have my own one, Django X, that's simpler by design, but I'm always curious if there's others out there I'm not aware of, because and actually Django X. So my own one is at this middle ground where it's basically just basic site with templates and authentication and custom user model. But I could make it how I start my projects now, which would be a lot more complex. It would sort of become Cookie Cutter, but I feel like that would make it less relevant to beginners who just want something up and going. So there is sort of this tension, between simple and then what you would actually use. Because Cookie Cutter is fantastic, but it's you need to know what you're doing to use it.
Yep.
Okay, so now something near and dear to Carlton's heart. So the API, can you talk about managing performance on the API and any sort of steps you've made along the way to serve all the data that you do?
All right, let's see.
If you recall.
I'm going back to the memory about how I started the API. So as I said, I started Listen Notes as a side project, and then I work on it full time starting in September 2017. And then after I run this website for a couple of months or so, I got some requests from developers asking if I provide APIs. And So that was the end of 2017. I was not sure whether API can be a viable business or whether it deserves my time.
Right.
So I tried to build a quick and dirty prototype, but I also want to be able to charge people for using the API. So I did some Googling. I found an API marketplace called Mashape, MASHAPE. Yeah. It doesn't exist anymore. It was acquired by a startup called Rapid API. So they rebranded this thing as Rapid API right now. It still exists, but with a different name. Okay, so I found this API marketplace, Mashape. It handles the payment, it handles API analytics, it measures how many API requests API users use during the building cycle, so they can do the building calculation and then handle some edge cases. Or if a developer subscribe to your API plan and unsubscribe and then subscribe again.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
Credit card, you get declined, something like that. I didn't want to deal with these things. Okay, so good. They handle all these things. So basically what I needed to do was to provide a few API endpoints and I hook up with their service. Okay, sounds easy. So I spent about 2 hours using Django Rest framework, building 3 endpoints, API endpoints. One for search, one for fetching podcast metadata by ID, one for fetching episode metadata by ID. That's it. So I think these are the minimum requirement for building a podcast app if you want to use my API. Okay, so after 2 hours, I had the API business running and people slowly sign up. But I didn't touch the API for about 1 year. You know, API business has long cycle. Today, someone discovered this Node API good. They sign up. They spend 6 months building their app. They spend another 6 months marketing their app. Maybe another 6 months to gain some traction. And then 2 years later, I start to collect money from them. So API business is slow. I didn't put any effort on the API for about 1 year. So the end of 2018, I saw some serious usage of the API. So tens of apps sign up by that point and some paid users. So I decided to replace Rapid API for the API gateway stuff. So I wanted to build my own payment, my own API analytics stuff. So there will be API V2. So I built this whole thing in the beginning of this year. Wow. And it's running now.
How long did, that sounds like a lot of work. Was that?
3 months. 3 months.
3 months.
Yes. So
that's a big commitment.
So basically, I prefer building things, making incremental changes, small incremental changes. So 3 months for me is a huge project. It's unusual.
Yeah. Well,
but I had to get it done. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a brilliant philosophy, though, to use an off-the-shelf tool, confirm that there's market validation before you spend the time, because that's the curse of engineers. Is it's fun to build your own everything, but it's usually not the best use of time unless it's a proven need.
Right.
Wow. Man, I'm so impressed by that. So the business itself now, so how does, in broad strokes, so you have the API that you charge for, you have ads on the site itself. How do you think about the business kind of where now and where you want it to be long term?
So right now it's kind of sustainable now for a one-person business. I'm doing fine. It's not going out of business any sooner. So, I start to think big picture. What's the long term? So basically, I want this nodes to make podcasts accessible in general. So let me explain a bit. So how many people in the world right now? Probably 8 billion, close to 8 billion. How many people listen to podcasts today? Less than 100 million, maybe less than 50 million. So there's still a lot of room to grow for podcasts or spoken audio in general. So we human beings get information through eyes and through ears.
Yeah.
Most big companies nowadays are basically focused on screen time.
Yeah.
Getting information through eyes. But I think audio has a huge potential in the future. Some companies like Apple, they're making AirPods. Amazon, they're making Echo. These are all voice-first products. And my instinct told me that audio could be something.
Yeah.
So if you can help people find audio contents, maybe it will be a good business.
Yeah.
And let's come back to listeners. How can listeners help podcasts become accessible? So so at this point we don't build apps. We don't build our own contents. It's a website. Website is easy for people to discover, to share, right? And especially for international users. And also we provide APIs so developers can quickly build podcast-related service using the API. They don't need to worry about the backend. And this can somehow help the innovation in the application space for podcasts, making podcasts more accessible. Yeah, this is why I think.
And speaking of international, do you use any of the international tools within Django I see it in English, but do you have other languages that you have support for?
Yes, we support more than 20 languages. If you go to website, you scroll down to the button, you see that you can switch to different languages.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And are you using the built-in Django tools for this, or what do you?
Yes. I use the built-in Django I18N stuff. It's very good. I'm very satisfied with Django for this. So basically, I generate a bunch of Django.po files, and then I outsource for translators.
Yes.
To translate into different languages. Yep, very easy.
And do you use a service for that? Because I know there are services that offer the find your translators, or do you have to have a relationship with individual translators?
I use a service. I've got a name. It's called Translator. Is that the service? I can send you the link for the show notes.
Okay, we'll put it in the show notes. So, it's interesting because lots of people have this
so
issue.
Basically, the service provides a translation editor. So you can see the English and the translated text side by side, and it's easy to translate. And they also have partnership with some translation agencies, so you can directly pay those agencies on the service. But for certain languages that I cannot find translators there, so I need to post on Upwork to find individual translators.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on all those languages. When I was in San Francisco, I worked at a company called Quizlet, and I worked a lot on the translation, which was literally we would get a Chinese teacher in San Francisco to translate the site. It was very. We found a couple users, and then we scaled up from there. And it's no easy thing. So it's impressive that you have all these languages, and it takes the maintenance, right? That's sort of the. For example, I was reading through, I think I caught a typo in one of your pages. I forget but if that were a word, that would be something then in every language. Next time you run through, you have to translate.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. It's far from perfect.
Yeah.
So,
but still, it's nice.
Still a lot of.
It's still nice to see a site in your own language. Obviously, I'm certainly guilty of assuming everything's in English. So. Wow.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see international users using listeners. And
one thing I did want to ask is, what versions are you using? Are you up to date? Are you on Python 3.7, 3.8 this week? Are you on Django 2.2?
So I'm using Django 2.1 and Python 3.6, 3.6.8.
Okay, so F strings.
Yeah. I started listeners in early 2017. So back then, the latest version was 1.9, I believe. I updated twice along the way, 1.9 to 2.0 and 2.0 to 2.1 for Django.
And how have you found that process? Was it easy? Did you hit backwards
it's
compatibility problems? Or?
So I basically allocate a couple of days every few months to upgrade major software components in the whole tech stack. So primarily Ubuntu, Django, Postgres, Elasticsearch. I like to keep using almost the latest version, not the latest one, maybe second to the latest one.
Yeah. Okay. And I always say it's a bit like it's servicing your car. It's doing the work to keep your car running. You've got to change the oil, check the tires.
Maintenance is important. It's not always building shining new features. You need to invest time to maintain this whole thing. For each upgrade, basically I would so basically I use Ansible to do the server provisioning. Right. I version control the Ansible configuration files. For each upgrade, I bump the version number in Ansible configuration files, and I would test on my local dev inside Vagrant and VirtualBox. And then I test on staging. And if things go well, I launch new production instances, change the load balancers setting, pointing to new servers. And I will keep the old instance running for a couple of days and then terminate them. Yeah. Pretty standard process.
No, but like done well and done professionally, and that's exactly the way it is. I like how you're building it in Vagrant first and then putting it to staging and then into production. That's just sweet. Well, I was going to ask, how do you handle like when you need to do a database migration that perhaps changes the structure of the data, and then you want to migrate it from staging to production? Say you're going to add a new field, or how would you handle a more complicated migration?
You mean something like schema migration, adding new column, adding index? Well,
where perhaps you need the old version to work back, and how do you handle what if I need to roll back? What's your strategy there?
So it's a very broad topic, because I basically keep some notes about database operations. What happens if I need to add a new column to a big table? What happens if I need to add index to a big table? Something like that. So mostly Django migration is enough for migrating the schemas. But sometimes I need to modify the migrate script to put in some raw SQL.
Run SQL operation.
Concurrent index, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to just in terms of forming a business, I think the fact that you've been around only 2 years, I mean, looking at your list, I mean, you use Stripe Atlas to incorporate. I mean, you must have been one of the very first users for that, right? I think that
probably
just launched.
Yeah.
I mean, so did you consider, a C Corp versus an LLC? I mean, because if you're obviously a C Corp is easier to bring on new people, but a little
we are C Corp. We are C Corp.
Yeah.
Because Stripe Atlas only supported C Corp back then.
Yeah.
Maybe they support LLC right now, but back then it's only C Corp.
Right. Well, right, because there's some. I mean, it depends on the business, but can be some tax advantages to an LLC. But if you want to have any employees or sell yourself, you have to be a C Corp. At Quizlet, we were an LLC for a long time. And then we were a top 100 website and still an LLC. So that was interesting working with the CEO on that transition. But it's easier to go from an LLC to a C Corp than back. And I see also, I mean, so Brex charge card. People outside of San Francisco may not know what that is, but that sounds also like a smart hack for a small business. Can you explain what that is?
Well, if you live in San Francisco, you see Brex billboard ads everywhere.
Yeah.
So I have the Brex card because they also give me 5,000 AWS credit on top of whatever credit I get.
Right. Well,
so it's very nice.
Because I mean, Stripe now is offering business loans, and I don't think they have a credit card, but I'm sure that's coming. interesting because it makes sense if you're Stripe that you have more financial data than you'd ever want.
Yep.
And
true.
and running these businesses, right? I mean, it makes me think. I mean, I have my own book publishing business, and I just have a simple Bank of America credit card, and I have to spend thousands of dollars on stuff, and I could use. Maybe I should rethink this. But maybe I guess that's an advantage. Being in San Francisco, you're surrounded by these best practices, or you're surrounded by these good offers, I should say, right? For all the needs.
I don't know whether it's best practice, but it's what other people are doing right here.
Yeah. Interesting.
From an ops point of view, I always hear this sort of idea that your credit card is the single point of failure, right? Because you've got your load balancer, you've got your multiple servers, but if your credit card gets
credit cards,
that's your servers go down.
You gotta have two.
Yeah, I have multiple credit cards. Actually, when I started Listen Notes, I posted a question on Hacker News asking what credit cards do people use, something like that. Because I found that on internet, you can find a lot of very high-level startup advice. Oh, you need to go to product market fit. You need to do this, do that. They are very high-level, very abstract. In terms of concrete advices, okay, where do you get an office? Where do you get a credit card? Which bank is better for small business? Something like that. It's very hard to find answers.
Yeah, you sort of have to ask someone you trust who's already done it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's something that, so you've been doing this over 2 years. I mean, for me last year, so I've been now doing books and teaching full time, and I probably had to spend 2 or 3 months just on my business setup last fall, which was deeply frustrating. But, many of these things you list here, setting up my bank accounts, credit cards, all this stuff is just,
You need to do bookkeeping.
Yeah, bookkeeping. I mean, I think like you using QuickBooks, but then, so it's a good problem to have, but it does often feel like you do kind of everything but coding or everything but your business just to keep it going. Yeah. Though I wonder, for you now, I was going to ask you, do you feel like you have things sufficiently automated now that you've invested in all these tools, or is it still?
No. So actually, running an internet business, coding, engineering is just a very small part of it. Most of the things you do is not engineering, it's not coding. So engineering is deterministic, right? Nowadays, it's 2019 now. If you want to build something, build a website, build an app, you can build it. You can build yourself, or you can outsource to hire contractors to build it. But business is very non-deterministic. There's no guarantee that you follow certain playbook, you can make money. And marketing is hard. I'm still figuring how to do marketing. Yeah. So I spent and there are a lot of manual operational tasks you need to do. For example, every day I spend 1/3 of my time just replying to emails.
Well, I was complaining to Carlton about this earlier this morning. I mean, it's like, how do you, it's like you need to have the information and you want to engage with your users, but it's like, what did I do today? I just responded to email.
To be frank, I quite enjoy the process of replying emails to users.
That's good. Well, good. So what's the positive take on it? Because you learned something from it, or it's because it's personal?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm opening a small restaurant, and I know all my customers. Well, they can talk to me very easily. So if you go to a website, go to Listen Notes, you can see my email address is on every page at the bottom. Right. So anyone can reach me. They get answer from me directly. And typically they get reply in a few minutes. I reply email very fast.
But that's the kind of thing that really builds a business, right? Because they have a connection with you, and you can offer a service which no way some giant competitor can offer.
Personally, I feel very frustrated to deal with faceless companies. Because I use a lot of third-party services, as you can see. If something go wrong, I need to find the contact. It's typically buried very deep, and when you send email to them, you get a ticket. oh, they assign a ticket to you and you reference to this ticket number. Then 1 week later, you get response from them. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's right. And then when something goes wrong or a competitor shows up, you don't feel any loyalty because there's no person on the other end of the line. And I guess, too, your service, once you have a customer, they're probably going to stay or grow, which is nice. I mean,
I hope so.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not a purely transactional thing. You're not selling, a book where someone buys it and then they leave almost for forever. No, that's great. I mean, that's the kind of things that is hard to, as engineers, it's hard to quantify the value of responding to emails and engaging with people, but I think it has all these incredible benefits. I mean, because I'm constantly being advised by some of my business friends who I say I spend a lot of time on email. They're like, "What are you doing? Hire someone else to do it for you." And maybe there's some truth, but I think it keeps you in touch with your users.
Exactly. I don't want to outsource this customer support too early to someone else. I want to do it in person. Yeah. And so in terms of other operational tasks, I built a bunch of internal tools connecting to Slack. So I'm using Slack. I don't talk to human beings on Slack. But on Slack, I get notifications when some events happen. Like some podcasters, they want to delete their podcast from our database. Okay, I get an alert, and I can do everything on Slack. I can run commands, and the podcast is deleted. I can look up a particular podcast. When new podcast is submitted to listeners, I get notification from Slack. I can see the basic information for the podcast image, the podcast title, the sample audio, so I can get a sense whether this is a legal podcast, and I can approve right there.
Wow.
So if I'm on a go, I am on vacation or something like that, I can do work on my phone because I can use Slack.
I was just going to ask how you do boundaries because I mean all three of us to a degree do our run single person companies, and that is always the problem is you never really turn off. But it sounds like you've automated Slack so you can relax because you don't have to worry about it, I guess, as much. But you're still getting notifications, right?
I still need to use a human judgment for certain things. Someone want to delete their podcast. I need to make sure this is the legit person. It's not a random person on the internet who want to delete Joe Rogan's podcast. Well, I cannot do that. So
yeah. I like how you've used Slack for that. Though it's kind of like a bash shell, but uses more memory.
Yes.
Well, I mean, because I sort of pride myself on not using Slack for anything, but I guess if you're used to it, but this actually sounds like maybe a good use case, and you probably had used it at your startups before, so.
Well, the problem with Slack is that there's other people.
Well, exactly right.
I'm the only human being on my Slack channel.
Right.
So I'm good.
That's kind of deep. I like that. Yeah. Are there any last things you want to mention or talk about before we wrap up? I mean, I'm so impressed by what you've built single-handedly here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you haven't listened to podcasts yet, listen to podcasts. Nowadays I get more information from podcasts than from other media formats. I put on my AirPods all day long. I listen to podcasts all day long. So on Listen Notes, I have the playlist feature, so you can curate episodes to playlist. You don't need to subscribe to podcasts. You can just add individual episodes to playlist. So I have a master playlist with 2,500 episodes over the past 2 years. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. You can subscribe to my playlist if you want.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Carlton, anything you wanted to add?
No, that's super. I just, what a super chat. I mean, it's lovely to talk with you, to go through your stack, how you're running it, and, really nice and realistic and grounded. It's just you, and you're able to run such actually quite a big installation single-handedly.
Thank you.
Perfect.
It's just you, so you remember these steps, because sometimes we interview people at bigger companies and they weren't around or they didn't decide, so they can't speak to that process of, from prototype to scale.
I think that's an advantage of me doing custom support. When people ask questions, I can explain why I built this, what's the history of this particular feature, why I made this decision, what are some edge cases that we don't handle right now, but they will be built in 2 months, something like that.
Right. Well, maybe as a last question, so what should people look forward to? What are some new products or features that are coming on Listen Notes in the future that you want to talk about?
No. So most of the time, I don't build new features, like big new features. Most of the time, it's just to iterate on existing features, adding new stuff. It's quite boring in some people's eyes. Let me give you one example. Like a search engine must have some filters, search filters. When you search, you may want to fine-tune the search results, right? Okay, how many search filters does Google have? You go to Google's advanced search page, you can see a lot. Right? Let's say there are 50 different filters, right? How many filters does Listen Notes have today? Maybe 7. Okay, 43 to go. So basically, today I built a new search filter. 2 weeks later, I built another one. Well, this kind of thing don't move the needle much, right? It's not like I build a filter and then the web traffic double. It's not like this. But it's a process. It's a long process. You keep improving the service incrementally, and making your user happy and making it useful.
Yeah.
Well, the key point is you want people to come back. You want people to keep using it and then tell their friends, and those incremental improvements are what's going to make them stay and recommend you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Super.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time today. We're going to have show notes for all the things we talked about, especially the article you wrote, which is really fantastic run through of a one-person startup. So thank you again.
Thank you. It's nice talking to you guys.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.